Welcome back to the Rolux X-Series mower. In this video we're going to show you how to set the cutting cylinder. Again, as a disclaimer, this particular mower has no petrol or oil in, which will allow us to tip it completely back on its handles. If yours does have petrol or oil in, it's advised to only tip it back insofar as it allows you to work underneath. So if you notice that your lawnmower is not cutting the grass as perfectly as you would like, it's probably an indication that you need to reset the cutting cylinder. So as a test, we'll show you what that looks like when you do a paper test. And you can see all it's doing is folding the paper over. And this will be the exact same effect that it has on your lawn. So the first thing you're going to want to do when setting your cutting cylinder is loosen these nuts which secure the bearing block to the side plate. This is done using a number 13 or half-inch spanner. It's not necessary to take the entire nut off. It's really just to loosen the tension, which will allow you to set. So during our testing, we saw that the paper was not cutting across the entire width of the cutting cylinder. This then means that we need to make adjustments to both sides of the cutting cylinder. We'll start off by making very, very minor adjustments to either side, and then repeating the process of testing with paper. So we can see there that the cutting takes place on the left-hand side, but is not yet cutting perfectly on the right-hand side. We now need to make further, very minor adjustment to the right-hand side. And again, we repeat the process of testing. Further adjustment is now required. Now that we have the cutting cylinders cutting on both sides, we want to make sure that it's set correctly across the entire width of the cutting reel, as changing one might impact the other. There we can see that it's cutting across the entire width of the cutting reel. Now that we've established the cutting is taking place across the entire width of the cutting reel, the only thing that's left to do is refasten all of the nuts that we've loosened. So to start with, we'll tighten this little nut, on the lock nut on the bottom, and it's not necessary to use the spanner for that, just using your fingers is sufficient. We'll complete the process on both sides, doing the same over here. Once we've fastened these two lock nuts, what's left is to tighten those on the bearing block. This is done using a number 13 or half-inch spanner. We'll complete the process on the other side. Now that we've fastened all the nuts back up, the next thing we want to do is to test and make sure that during the tightening process we haven't offset the cutting cylinder again. So this is the final test now, just to make sure that everything has stayed nice and set. And we can see that the mower is still cutting across the entire width. We want to give it a spin, just to make sure that the cutting reel is not set too tightly. As a new mower, you may experience that this may be a little bit noisy, but after a few mows, the bed knife and the cutting reel will set themselves in